Before we dive into today's episode, I have something truly special to share. Next September, I'll be leading an intimate women's retreat through the south of France and northern Italy, and you're invited. Picture this: mornings exploring the colorful markets of the French Riviera, afternoons sipping wine, and a hotel view with golden Mediterranean sunsets. Whether you love photography, food, or just want to reconnect with your playful creative self, this trip is designed for you. Spots are limited, so if all this sounds like your kind of adventure, please visit tourwithabsolutely.com and look for the tour France and Italy with Crystal. You can also send me a message or check out the show notes. Claudine Hemingway is a descendant of famed writer Ernest Hemingway. We bumped into each other at a party and decided to team up and dive deep into French history, but with a twist, by bringing a spotlight to those lesser-known creatives in France. This is History with a Hemingway. So welcome back, guys. I'm back with Claudine, and today we're talking about the theft of a painting at the Louvre, but not the Mona Lisa. We're going to learn about another stolen piece of artwork, and I'll let Claudine take it from here.
Yes, and this one obviously didn't have the same effect when it was stolen because you don't know what it is.
You have no idea.
Yeah. If it was, the Mona Lisa, we know her, of course, because we've done 6 episodes about it. So everybody should know the reason why the Mona Lisa is famous. But when I was researching long ago, I was like, well, what other paintings have been stolen from the Louvre? And there's quite a few that have been stolen, a few that basically they still don't know where they are. But this one is one, and it is back in the Louvre, and it kind of has an interesting story to it.
Well, I am excited to hear about it because like you said, I think there's been quite a few, and then we don't know about it. And this one came back.
Yes, this one came back. So it was on June 11th, 1939, that a painting by Antoine Watteau, it was called L'Indifferent, was quickly cut from its wires. It left in the middle of the day from a full room that was dedicated to Dr. Louis Lacaze's collection in the Denon wing, which is where the Mona Lisa is, the Denon wing. But to make matters worse, it was 20 years after the theft of Mona Lisa, and it wasn't the guards who discovered it was gone. Yet again, it was a visitor to the Louvre.
I love how they just walk in and just take stuff off the walls.
Yeah, well, this painting is tiny. I mean, this painting is like the size of like a notebook piece of paper. Like it's like 8 by 10, a little bit over 8 by 10. It's very tiny. So on that day, on June 11th, a tour guide named Colette Tissier walked into the Salle de la Case and at the very far end of the first floor of the Denon wing and noticed that a small painting was missing. This part of the Louvre where it was stolen from, we don't have access to it anymore. It's just the room past where the Denon wing finishes up, and it's where like the Spanish paintings are, and back then the Louvre was laid out much differently, but it was at the very far end, and that's when she noticed it was missing. So she asked the guard named Charles Cesari where it was, and a chain reaction of alarms went on, although it was too late because the painting was already gone. The guard remembered the day before a man that stood there for a very long time in front of the small painting. The guard later said that the strange man had asked a bunch of questions about another painting on the other side of the room that was diverting his attention. The next day, on June 11th, the guard noticed the man, but then he was gone as he went on his break at 3:35 p.m. At 3:50 is when the alarm bell rang and the doors closed and all the visitors were searched as they left. But it was too late. So the paintings today, when you go to the Louvre and you look at the paintings on the wall, they're all hung by these metal rods, those metal, like square rods that hang down, and they're clipped onto the wall. Some hang from above, but some of them are clipped. And so they're done that in case there's a fire, they have to be able to get the paintings down quickly. So I don't think, we could just go in there and snap one off. I think it's they have to know what they're doing. But in 1939, this Watteau painting was hung by steel wire that you would do something you'd hang a painting at home with. And so this thief went in every single day for 2 weeks. He lifted this 8 by 10 painting up just a little bit with his shoulder and reached behind it and just kept twisting the wire. So it basically made it tighter and tighter and tighter and thinned the wire enough for him just to quickly cut it on that June 11th day.
That's super smart.
Super smart. In 1939, just as in 1911, the guards were former military and police, but there still wasn't enough to cover the space, even though the size of the Louvre had gotten bigger, not to what we see it is today, but it was bigger than it was in 1911. There was 114 guards covering 400 rooms, which means just about one guard in every 4 rooms. And the room this one was in was a pretty good sized room. At the time, a gentleman named Henri Verne was the director of the Louvre. And in the first 4 years he was there, he did a lot. He moved the Asian antiquities to the Guimet Museum. He expanded the galleries by moving into the upper floors of the Sully wing. He even suggested they move the Ministry of Finance out of the Richelieu wing, which would not happen until 1989. And he also brought in a lot of the Egyptian collection from the other museums in Paris. But one of his biggest accomplishments was adding lighting to the museum and expanding the hours, which people love to come in later at night. So Verne got the job in 1911 after Théophile Homoul was fired after the theft of the Mona Lisa. This is like the guy coming in after him would probably be like, I don't know if I want this job.
Yeah, and then another theft.
Yeah. But Verne eventually met his same fate in December of 1939. But the next director was one of my favorites, Jacques Choujar, who would be the savior of the art of the Louvre during World War II. So the painting was gone again. There's very few clues, just like before. Again, 28 years later. Like, you know how in America, when the guy went on the airplane and he had explosives in his shoes, and that was, I don't know, 15 years ago, and we still have to take off our shoes?
Yep, I hate that guy.
You would think that the Louvre, after having one of the most famous pieces of art now stolen, that they would put everything in place to never let this happen again. But no. So the Louvre tried to keep it concealed until the 12th of June, and then they told the authorities, but they wouldn't even let them in the museum until the 13th to investigate it. Then an international search went underway. The Louvre reopened to the public on June 15th. Once again, the lines of people were there to come into the room just to see the place where the painting had hung. Since the theft of the Mona Lisa, the Louvre did put in a permanent security commission that involved a director of the Beaux-Arts Museum, or the school, excuse me, the architects and representatives of the police and fire, based in the pavilion over in the Cour Carré. And they were so far from the scene of the crime, they weren't even told about the situation till the next day. So that's not working so well. So for 2 months, a commissioner, André Roche, led an exhaustive search for the painting. The daring but easy robbery didn't yield many clues. And then one day they received a call that within the hour they should expect news of the theft. So
That's interesting.
on August 14th, the media was alerted that something sensational was going to happen at the courthouse. A tall, lean man arrived with 4 lawyers. He went directly to the press. He introduced himself as Serge Claude Boguslavski. He said he is the great-grandson of sculptor Pierre Puget, and he declared that he was the one who stole Watteau's Les Différents from the wall of the Musée du Louvre, and everybody gasped.
So he was just taking back his art.
Yeah. So Serge, or Bog, as he liked to be known, he was 24 years old. He was the son of a Russian immigrant who led a pretty quiet life. He was arrested on site and he was sent to the Santé prison where he awaited trial. He had planned to steal the painting for over a year, and he frequently visited the small beauty. So you're not going to believe why he did it. So Serge was basking in the limelight when he went on to tell them that every day for 15 days before he stole it, he visited, he would twist the wire and waiting for it to get thinner and thinner. He said, I could not stand to see it in the condition any longer, so I simply took it home with me. He thought that the restoration work on it was so bad that he could do a better job, and that's why he stole it.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, it's pretty hilarious. So on June 11th, he cut the wire. We said he put the small painting under his coat again, just like the Mona Lisa, and he walked right out the door. He said that he thought the restorers didn't correct the errors that had been done in earlier installations or restorations. So, in his small apartment on the top floor of number 203 Rue Saint Honoré, which is just down the street from the Louvre, he restored, quote unquote, the painting by washing it. He brought out the colors and he removed the Diablo, which is like a Chinese yo-yo. So this painting, what it is Watteau, and I'll tell you a little bit more about him, but he painted it and it looks like he's a dancer and he's standing there and he's got his arms out and he's wearing like this kind of blue satiny looking outfit and he's got this pink cloak over his arm, and in his left hand he was holding this thing called a Diablo, and it's a Chinese yo-yo, and it looks like basically like two bowls put together, and in the middle of it they would use these two sticks and kind of go up and down with this toy. So he thought that Watteau would never have painted that, so he removed it from the painting.
That's
And
that was crazy, basically.
it's still not there. But he also used industrial strength varnish and substance that would harm more than help the painting, although he felt so obliged to protect it. During the process, he also wrote a manifesto stating the reason why he took the painting, and he planned to return it to the Louvre with the manifesto and then kill himself.
Okay, so he was definitely crazy.
Yeah. But he decided to return it, and this is hilarious. And because we live in France, the first one, you're going to be like, well, yeah, of course, that's why. So he had three reasons that compelled him to bring this. The first was so the magistrate could go on their long-awaited French vacation in August.
That was so kind of him.
I know. Second, the French police could focus on the national defense as it neared World War II. And lastly, to relieve Scotland Yard, which had put through a great deal of trouble because, the search was going on all over Europe. On October 10th, 1939, Bog was sentenced to 2 years in prison and a fine of 300 francs. He appealed the conviction, and on December 4th, his sentence was changed to 4 years. After his release, he exiled to Switzerland with his wife, Denise Nucia, who was a mistress of an actor named Richard Desprez, who she hooked up with when he was away in prison. But just a few short weeks, Watteau was retouched. It returned to the Louvre and was on display. It was the only painting in the Louvre because 13 days later, on December 29th, it was packed up and moved to the Loire Valley. So as we know from past episodes, at the end of August 1939 is when they emptied the Louvre. So for those 2 months into October, it was, many convoys every single day were driving out of France or out of Paris to the Loire Valley. And so when it was returned, when the painting was returned after the trial was over, it was the only painting there in the Louvre that you could see.
That's really funny. And this guy, did he like sit in prison while World War II was going on?
Yeah.
What a time
Yeah,
to be
for
in
4 years.
prison.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's we probably don't want to for me to start going down that rabbit hole, but I wonder if they were all moved out just like the art.
Yeah, like what they do with the prisoners.
I know, maybe they moved him out someplace.
Yeah, that seems kind of scary to be in prison when like Germany's occupying the
Yeah.
country.
I mean, you would think that maybe the Germans would be like, we're going to bomb the prison and let them all out so that these, crazy criminals could wreak havoc on the city.
Yeah, I wonder how that worked. Like, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
I don't know. But during the war, they actually did restore the painting, even though that's what they should have done with the Mona Lisa. But restore Jean-Gabriel Gugnet took special care during the years while it was in the Loire Valley. He reported that the painting was attacked and some of the paint was scraped off his hat, his left arm, and the leg, and then removing the Diablo was an arrogant act in and of itself. And the Diablo has never returned on there. But Watteau, if you don't know, Jean-Antoine Watteau was born October 10th, 1684 in Valenciennes in the north of France, that had been a part, it is the very, very top of France. And it was only part of France for 6 years. Before there, it was part of the Flemish area. At 18, he moved to Paris and into the Saint-Germain neighborhood with other Flemish artists and began to paint, but not in the romantic way we'd like to think. The young Antoine got a job at a small shop on the Pont Notre Dame when the bridges used to have, houses and buildings on it. He was employed as a copyist and a sign painter. In 1709, with loftier goals, he entered the Prix de Rome contest, but finished in second place. He returned back to Valenciennes for 3 years, refocusing, and he joined the Royal Academy on July 30th, 1712. He moved nearby, which the Royal Academy was actually at that time in the Louvre. He moved to the Quai de Conte on the left bank, where he worked on the piece that would be his most famous. Watteau was given special access as well to the Palais de Luxembourg and the Rubens Medici cycle that I love, those 24 paintings. And I've been scouring the internet trying to find copies that he did of those, and I can't find anything. He came about at this time. It was after Louis XIV died. So Louis XIV died on September 1st, 1715. His great-grandson, Louis XV, was only 5 years old at the time. So Philippe the Duc d'Orléans, who was the nephew of Louis XIV, served as his regent. He moved the court back to Paris from Versailles. In Paris, the parties returned to the Hotel Particulier and the Palais Royal. So the days of frivolity and decadence was here, and Watteau was about to capture them all on canvas. So on August 18th, 1717, Watteau entered the reception piece, L'Embarquement pour Citer, and it is one of the most famous paintings. It's in the Louvre. Again, these paintings are not in the Louvre where anybody goes as well. But upon seeing the painting, the Academy had a difficult time classifying it, so they decided to call it a faire galant, which gives its name to the whole genre and the place in the Academy. So the faire galant basically means like the gallant parties. And so these paintings are of like people like in their fancy dresses and outfits and just hanging out in gardens and having a good time and partying it up and making out. And so it's this painting. We talked about this painting, I think, in the first year of the podcast. And now we're going into the fifth year. We just had 4-year anniversary. But we talked about it when we did one about love in the Louvre. And it was one where Debussy would go into the Louvre every day and he'd go look at this painting, and he wrote an entire piece dedicated to that painting. So I'll have to post that on a link on my website. But they're all really beautiful. Watteau sadly didn't paint for very long because at the end of 1720, he was suffering of tuberculosis. He moved out of Paris to the Nogent-sur-Marne to live with a friend of his. He died on July 18th, 1721, and was buried at the Église Saint-Marin in the same town, Nogent-sur-Marne. They desecrated during the revolution his tomb, and they were just destroyed. But you can go and find a monument dedicated to him at in the town by Louis Auret. It was inaugurated 1865. But if you want to see something closer, and on November 8th, 1896, a monument was dedicated to Watteau at the Jardin de Luxembourg by Henri Désiré Gautier. And I love Henri Désiré. And I was like, oh, that was a name, remember, of our Parisian Blackbeard. Remember the
Oh
one
yeah,
where he
yeah, I
killed him,
remember.
killed
Yeah.
all the ladies and cooked them in the oven?
Yes.
But today, anywhere from 35 to 90 paintings are attributed to Watteau. Since his early paintings were copies, some historians attribute fewer to him, but the majority of them were the scenes of the Fête Gallant. But the provenance of this painting is also something I love because it has a connection to two different ladies we have talked to. Isn't that exciting?
That is super exciting. We talk about so many. I mean, in 4 years.
I
Who,
know.
who
Which
are the
you I say I could try to make you guess, but you probably won't make it.
It won't work. It won't work.
You just say Barrett, but it's not Barrett.
Bert.
But so the first painter that owned it was a painter and a miniaturist. Like he painted those little tiny snuff boxes, was a gentleman named Jean-Baptiste Massier. And he was the first to own the painting in 1729 after the death of Watteau. After the death of Massier, it was sold to the Marquise de Marigny, who was a superintendent of buildings under Louis XV, a job he was able to slide into thanks to his sister, Madame de Pompadour, the lover of the king. Marigny died on May 11, 1781, and the painting was sold a year later to a gentleman named Auguste Gabriel Godefroy. He was the son of a jeweler named Charles, and the family had a long love affair with art. The young Auguste was depicted in a painting by Chardin called L'Enfant au Tâton. This found hanging in the Louvre just 2 rooms away from the painting that was stolen. I love that. But on September 29th, 1806, it was sold to an art dealer named Jean-Baptiste Lebrun. Do you remember who she was? His wife was Elisabeth Vigée Lebrun, the one that did the paintings of Marie Antoinette. And we also talked about her.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. This is all connected. It's all one
Isn't
big
that
Paris
crazy?
village.
I love it. Love it when there's a connection. So in 1848, it was purchased by Dr. Louis Lacaze, who in 1865 gave his collection to the Louvre. It is the largest donation in museum history and probably just about any museum in the world. It was 583 paintings and drawings covering Dutch, Flemish, Spanish, and French artists, including Watteau. At the time of the donation, the Louvre only owned one painting by Watteau. Now they have 19 and numerous drawings.
Wow, that's so crazy.
Isn't that crazy? So they used to have a lot of those connect in one room. And so a lot of his, but obviously there's of the 583, there's about 287 of those are in the Louvre. The other almost 300 paintings are scattered throughout France at other museums. When somebody gives a collection to the Louvre, and there's quite a few of them, and that's what the Louvre continues to grow today because of donations. And so the Louvre opened 231 years ago, and it was a collection of the kings, mostly Francois Premier and Louis XIV. And then it was also pieces that they had taken from people that had fled during the revolution, because when they left, they're like, hey, guess what? You left. We get whatever you have. So that's what was basically when the Louvre opened during the revolution that it was filled with. And to this day, it still continues to grow because of donations. When somebody gives a donation, they could say, just here you go, have it, do whatever you want with it. Some of them, like my favorite one by collection by Carlos Basquigi, he said it can never be separated. It always has to be hung together, and it always has to be hung in the way that I wanted it to be hung. So Louis Lacaze, when he gave the collection, at first it said for 100 years it had to be somewhat together, but then after that it could be whatever. And it is scattered throughout the museum now because it's covering so many schools, the Spanish, French, Dutch, everything. It's all over the place in the Louvre, but there's a lot of it. But it's pretty amazing that they only had one representation of Watteau in the collection before, and now they have 19, which could be essentially half of all the Watteau paintings ever done.
Could you imagine having your art in the Louvre? Like you're just like, yep, that's my painting that I sent
That's
them.
yeah.
That's
There
my
was a good friend of mine. He does the VIP tours. I don't know if we've ever talked about this on you and I talk about this all the time because I love him. But he was telling me he does a VIP tour, so he gets to go in there when like he just took J-Lo in there recently and Pharrell Williams and all these other people. But he also sometimes he took a gentleman in, and I think this was probably 2 years ago, but he was from the US. He gave one painting to the Louvre, just one painting. And he was older. He was in a wheelchair. He came to Paris and he wanted to see it hanging in the Louvre because he gave it to him. And so my friend had taken him in there to see it. And he had told me which painting it was. And every time I go into the Louvre, I think about that. And it does say, it'll say on the information plaque, it'll say, who donated it, or, sometimes people want it to be anonymous. I rarely see it say anonymous in the Louvre. But it is pretty cool. Like, you could come there. I mean, just think his grandkids could come in there and be like, that was our grandpa's painting and he gave it to the Louvre.
I mean, yeah, that's really amazing. And
Yeah,
yeah, who wouldn't want that? That's really
I know.
interesting.
Pretty neat. Many of Watteau's paintings you could also find out the Chateau de Chantilly, and then also in St. Petersburg, Russia. During World War II, the Rococo artist was a favorite of Hitler and his main henchman, Goring. He tried to convince Jacques Jouard to give him the Louvre's entire Watteau collection. They refused and countered with the return of 8 works that were in the Berlin Museum that was also not given back. The French did give up one piece of art. It was a sculpture, but I'll tell you about that another time. But if you want to see the painting, Watteau's L'Indifférent, it's behind a glass wall, thankfully, in Salle 918 on the second floor of the Sully Wing, which is one of my favorites because the entire second floor is all French paintings in chronological order. So it's really cool to go from one side because you literally see how the progression and changed the style in art as you go.
I love it. Let's all head to the Louvre and check it out, guys. Another stolen work. Mona Lisa's got some competition.
I know, but see, it's funny. Like, we talked a month or so ago about the Monet painting that was stolen, Prussian Sunrise. Nobody really knows that about it being stolen, and they are very quiet about ever sharing it. And then this one, nobody really knows this one's, and this part of the Louvre nobody goes to. Like, I was there a couple mornings ago, and I was the only one up there for about an hour and a half, other than the people working.
Even more reason to go there.
Yeah, it's like as soon as somebody walks in and they're noisy, I'm like, ugh, I gotta leave because it's my perfect little silent oasis. And then as soon as like groups come through, I'm like, oh, I gotta go. But it's
Yeah, Claudine, guys, knows all the best spots in the Louvre because I think you know the whole place like the back of your hand at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to Jacques, and I always say that I go, nobody knows as much about the Louvre. And then we were together recently, and he was like, no, no, sweetheart, you know more about the Louvre. So we went in recently to go see the return of the Delacroix painting, Liberty Leading the People. It was restored, and it's phenomenal. And we went into the day it came back together to go see it. And then we walked around the Louvre, and it was so much fun because he was pointing out and telling me things that I didn't know, and I was pointing out and telling him things that he didn't know. And it was so much fun because he knows so much about it that, it was like our nerdy little art history hearts were exploding.
Love like historians giving historians tours, like guides
It's
giving
actually
guides tours.
it's actually pretty fun. I did that at the Santu Stash too when they had their 850th anniversary. I went and did this tour, and the guy that was giving the tour, I said, oh, he asked something, and I had said something about, I do tours, and there's a bunch of stuff I know about the church, but I want to know more. And so then it was just him and I, like nobody else came on the tour. So the whole time he was like, okay, he's like, oh, if you know about church, okay, I'm going to show you this. So he was like taking me to all these places that nobody would normally go to because he's like, oh, if you know it, then you'll really love this. So it's actually kind of fun. I think sometimes some tour guides are just, they hate everybody else that does tours, as some of them that I've found the hard way. But but also sometimes it's like, no, this is actually really awesome because you're already sharing something with somebody that knows a little bit about it. And so you could go really deep into the info. It's pretty fun.
Exactly. We can all learn from each other and share and be kind. And we're working on it. But yeah, that's
The
so
perfect world.
fascinating. And guys, make sure you go to ClaudineHemingway.com. You can learn more. She always posts pictures and you can take a tour with Claudine because obviously she learns more every week. And she's like in there every day practically.
Yeah, all the like tours out in the city in Saint-Germain, all over. I could pretty much, because of the podcast, I could do a tour in just about every street of Paris at this point.
Well, guys, make sure you tune in next week and head over to ClaudineHemingway.com and learn more and connect with Claudine. Thanks for listening today, guys. If you're interested in learning more about Claudine, her tours, history, and the beautiful photographs that she posts all over Instagram, tune into her website, claudinehemingway.com.